What is up? What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Battery Mates podcast. I am Dirty Dave. That is the Sandman Sean sitting over there. Mr. Sean, how are we doing on this wonderful Monday? We usually record on Sundays, but a Monday recording today. How was the start of your week, sir?
Oh man, not too bad. We're finally warming up a little bit as far as the weather goes, at least where I'm at. So it wasn't bitterly cold today. I worked remote today, so didn't have to get out too much or anything like that. So all in all, man, it was I guess as good of a Monday as you can have. You know, Monday's just kind of Monday. So what about you? How's your week kicking off?
Oh man, it's starting off good. I didn't get to work remote, so thanks for rubbing that in. But but I'm back home now and ready to talk about some baseball, man. Not a lot's been going on in the world of the MLB and the Atlanta Braves since the last time we talked. We'll talk a little bit about a few moves that happened across baseball. And we're actually going to start looking into projections for 2024. So stick around for that one. But before we get started, we do have a little bit of housekeeping to do, like we always do. We are available to you guys on two platforms right now. I know that I've been hearing rumblings that we might need to add a third soon. But for right now, you can find us at two places. You can listen to us on Spotify. Or you could watch us on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll get to see us waving in 3, 2, 1. There we are. Look at those beautiful smiles, man. Look, man, we're a good looking bunch, I gotta say. If you missed out on that on Spotify, you have to go to YouTube and see the smiles and the waves. I mean, that's the best part. We are available on all social media, Twitter/X, or if you're me, just Twitter. You on Facebook, you can go on TikTok, and we find us with the Battery Mates podcast on all of those platforms. And yeah, that's all the normal housekeeping we like to do. We appreciate all the follows. We appreciate all the, discussing the Braves with us on social media. We both thrive to talk baseball. That's what we do. That's why we do this. So the more that you guys talk with us, the more we'll talk with you, and the better we'll be for setting up for Braves baseball come season. I do want to mention two things really quickly before we get into our content as well. As you may remember, I am from the Chicagoland area, so I grew up really close to Cubs baseball. I do want to give a shout out and thoughts being sent out to Ryan Sandberg, who today announced that he has been diagnosed with prostate cancer, and unfortunately it is spreading. But he is going under treatment, so we're hoping for nothing but well wishes to him and to his family and friends and the Cubs organization as a whole. And that's the negative thing I want to talk about. The positive thing I want to talk about is Immaculate Grid did have the Braves featured a few days ago, and I am going to do one of my favorite things, which is naming random baseball players. If the Sandman Sean will tell you that I do love getting my baseball players on this Immaculate Grid each day that are 0.01 percenters. So I do want to give shout outs to 3 players that got named. So if you've never played Immaculate Grid, basically you have a logo or a statistic or a fact, and it'll intersect with another team or stat or fact or whatever it may be, and you have to name somebody that matches both of those. So, for example, the column with the Braves featured the logos of the Cardinals, Phillies, and Cubs. So I got to name random Braves players that played for those other teams as well. So I want to give a shout out to the Braves and Cardinals square, which was Bernard Gilkey. The Braves Phillies square, which I put Wes Helms in for, and of course the Cubs Braves square, which was Tyler Houston, the former catcher. So shout out to Gilkey, Helms, and Houston. Yeah, that's kind of my jam. I'm a nerd, and I'm never gonna apologize for it. And you can't make me, Sean.
No, man, no, absolutely. I wouldn't do that to you. So I can tell you, I don't get the super low numbers like Dave gets whenever I get it. He's a complete baseball history junkie, But I will say, if you had to make me name I'll name those 3 right now. For the Cardinals and the Braves, I probably would have went with Edgar Renteria.
Mm-hmm. Great answer.
For the Braves and the Phillies, it was recent, but I think he's a small enough name outside of the Braves fans that not a lot of people would have picked him. So I went with Christian Pache for the
Mm,
Braves and Phillies, as he
good
finished out
answer.
the year in Philly last year. And then the Braves and the Cubs, you know, obviously, I would assume the number one answer is probably Greg Maddux. I would assume that's probably the one
I
that,
hope so.
that if it's not, I would be I would be amiss if that was not it. So I tend to usually always go with one of those super obvious ones. So I probably go with Greg Maddux, or maybe you may have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking Mike Remlinger
Oh yeah.
played for both
Oh,
of those.
absolutely.
So I
Mike
think
Remlinger.
that would have been the
I
one for me. So I think I
I
would have
thought you
went
were going with a
Renteria.
different relief. I thought you were going with a different relief pitcher. I thought you were going to go with Jesse Chavez. I know he's your guy.
I know. I know. The thing what's crazy is you could almost put Jesse Chavez, Braves and any other team, you could almost put Jesse Chavez.
So
So
many.
he's almost a cheat code. He's almost a cheat code with immaculate grid because it's never like his numbers are going to be super high or anything.
Right.
But yeah, no, I think I would probably have went with Renteria, Pache, and then Remlinger.
Yeah, no, and you're spot on with Maddox being the top choice for the Cubs Braves. 29% of people chose Maddox. 21% of people, the top score for Braves Cardinals, Marcelo Zuna, and
Oh,
then
that's a good one.
30%, an even higher number than Greg Maddox for the Braves and the Phillies. That's Craig Kimbrell. So he was
Oh,
the top guy
that's a
there.
big one.
Good
Yeah, that's a
answers.
big one. Mm-hmm.
Cubs and Braves have a few guys though, like Jason Hayward probably stole a bunch of Maddox votes. So,
Yeah.
but yeah. So if you play Immaculate Grid, I'd love to see your guys' Brave scores. Again, go on Twitter, follow us at the Battery Mates Podcast, show us your scores. I will try to beat them, and I will let you know that there's a decent chance I beat them.
Yeah.
Just
You know
gonna
what,
let you know right now.
Dave, we should every day, we should start doing immaculate grid and each of us posting our grid onto our social medias. I think that would be a fun
You
thing for each of us to do.
you are a genius, Sean. I am absolutely gonna start doing that. Starting tomorrow,
Just a
Tuesday, we'll
content.
start
I'm
dropping
a
our Immaculate
content
Grid.
genius. I'm just a content
This guy,
genius.
why do you think I have you along for the ride, Sean? I mean, this is what
Exactly
I
right.
get you for, man.
Exactly.
Braves knowledge and
Exactly.
content. That's what I know I can get out of you every week.
Absolutely. Every time.
Let's jump into our actual content this week since we're talking
Yeah.
about it. We there's nothing to talk about for the Braves. Nothing happened. Which we kind of knew.
Yeah. Just
They're
like
done.
I think I called it a couple weeks ago. I said we will make a couple of moves. We did sign, and now the name is going to lose me but we signed a pretty good a guy that pitched pretty well in the the Dominican League. I think relief pitcher signed to an MILB deal. He had like a sub 1 WHIP and like just pitched lights out. And now I can't remember his name, but we did sign him to an MILB deal earlier this week. But outside of little moves like that, I think we both kind of knew that was done. And then obviously we had the international signings, from I guess probably a little over a week ago now. But outside of that, like I said, I think we both kind of knew the Braves are pretty much done. We're pretty much set. Maybe a couple of, I wouldn't mind seeing a Kevin Pillar type, maybe, another guy to put on the bench there. And he was pretty, the Braves fans liked him. He was one of those guys. He when he did play, he could go 3 weeks without playing, then he'd come up and give you 3 competitive bats if he had to start, or he'd pinch hit, and he had a couple of walk-offs, and just so somebody like that I could see. But I think, like you said, I think Braves are pretty much done between now and spring training. So
Yeah. A Brave legend did sign a deal, though. We will say that Braves legend Matt Carpenter is going back to St. Louis. He signed a 1-year deal, so wanted to touch, based on that.
What's
Unfortunately,
funny?
no mascot heads.
Yeah, exactly. No mascot heads. The
uh,
only two active players from the Cardinals 2011 World Series team are Lance Lynn and Matt Carpenter, and they both re-signed with St. Louis this year, 12 years later. So, I don't know if they're just hoping for some good juju with that or what, but,
yeah.
I
Well,
don't know that we have
St.
most of
Louis
those going
has.
back to St. Louis on the bingo card.
Yeah, no, Cardinals have their Cardinal way. You play the game the right way. So they fit in really well with that. So I'm sure that the fans are ecstatic they're coming back. A couple of moves I would talk about specifically involving left-handed relievers. That market's starting to shore up a little bit. Josh Hader signed a huge deal, 5 and 95 with Houston. That's big money for a relief pitcher for sure. $24 million per year. He was the biggest move since we had last got together here, Sean. And then actually, it's a good thing we waited till today to record because there was one more signing, which was Aroldis Chapman went to Pittsburgh earlier today on a 1-year deal at $10.5 million. I know at the beginning of the offseason, we started talking about our projections for guys we were thinking the Braves might move on to. And I said I wanted a lefty reliever, and I specifically said, well, if you're going to splash on one guy, maybe Hader is that guy. So they didn't do that. He's going to Houston. Of course, Houston absolutely is a team that could end up playing Atlanta come October/early November. Did that move worry you at all, Sean? What were your thoughts on Josh Hader going to Houston?
Well, I think it's an overpay. I'll preface it. I'll start it with that. I definitely think it is an overpay. Your relievers don't get those deals, and there's a reason. The typically when a reliever loses it, they lose it, and it's quick, and there's not really any. You don't typically see a lot of signs for where it's just like somebody as dominant as Josh Hader. Like when he loses it, it's going to be quick. I mean, we mentioned Craig Kimbrell earlier, and he was elite, and then all of a sudden he was just kind of and it wasn't really a steady drop off. A starter, sometimes you'll get that more steady drop off. You start seeing some velo go or this go, and they kind of can adjust their game. But you get somebody like Josh Hader, and he knows how to pitch one way, and he's going to throw gas. And so 5 years, full no trade, $24 million a year. It makes them really scary in the near term. They've got one heck of a bullpen. They've got Presley out there still. They've got Abreu. They've got really good arms there on the back end of that. I know we talked off screen, we talked off segment, and you mentioned, it may be a situation where Houston's like, hey, we just need to get 5 out of our starter, and let's go trot out these 4 guys from the bullpen. And, so I think it makes them scary in the near term, but I think that it's probably a deal that maybe year 3, 4, or 5, they might be like, $24 million for Josh Hader now doesn't look quite as good.
No, and I absolutely agree with that. I've never been a fan of spending huge money on relievers. I definitely didn't think he was going to get a 5-year, $95 million deal, which I think I gave the wrong number. If it's $19 million a year, not 24, I was doing the math wrong. But that's a lot of money. That's more. I honestly didn't think he was going to get that much money. When you look around baseball last year, I think 11, maybe 12 guys made 10 million or more out of a bullpen, and you're almost doubling that number. And Atlanta has one of those guys in Raisel Iglesias, and he's worked out. He's worked out, but Edwin Diaz signed that huge contract, got hurt right away. When he comes back, who knows what he's going to be like? He could be a completely different pitcher. You just don't know. And so I definitely agree with you. I think it's an overpay. And Houston kind of seems like one of those teams that every year, they get a free agent or two for sure, but is this the one big fish that Houston needed? I would say when you look at the fact they have a good bullpen already, I would have said no. I would not have put them on the list of teams that would have been going after it, going after him specifically. But when you're as good as Houston is in the same vein, though, you get to do these kind of moves. And Atlanta was in the same boat. We were talking about making moves like this early in the offseason. Well, why don't we just kick the tires on somebody who we know you're going to have to spend a little extra to get them on a 2-year deal? But why not try for it? If you have all this extra money sitting around and you have nothing else to do with it, go ahead and do it. Houston's so good at building their farm system. I mean, every other year it seems they bring up an MVP candidate. I mean, they go from Bregman to Tucker to Yordan Alvarez, and you're like, where are they getting these guys from? What is happening? So if you're confident that you can build a team and not have to worry about it, then, do the FU move. Just make it happen. There's going to be nothing like, oh, my goodness, we got through with this closer. Oh, my goodness, they're bringing out another closer that's going to be impossible to hit. This is terrible, especially come playoff time. One of them doesn't do well. another closer can step right in. I think it's a solid strategy, but also, yes, an overpay.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I agree. It's like I said, I think it's very much a we're going to overpay and hope that we get another World Series in the next year or two. And it's we'll eat year 3, 4, and 5 if he's not Josh Hader that we all know over those next all 5 years. If they can win a ring in the next year or two, kind of, Altuve's getting a little bit older. The core for them is kind of getting a little bit older. Jordan, even though he's relatively young in the league, he's not. He's in his late 20s already. Jordan, so I think that core is just kind of getting a little bit older. So I think it's more so them really, let's get all the chips in on the table. Let's just go all in now, and let's see, if we can't wrap us up another World Series or two, in the next 5 years.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting because, of course, there's so many good teams in baseball right now. I still feel like baseball is fairly top heavy. The teams that are spending the most are doing the best. Texas has a huge payroll. They win. The year before, Houston has a huge payroll. They win it all. Um, you know, I really feel like the last team that didn't win off the back of gigantic free agent signings, my favorite verb that I like to use for the Braves 2021, they were cobbled together at the trade deadline through all these other pieces. So every team's building differently, but the teams that are consistently at the top are spending big time money and getting these free agents like Josh Hader to come in and pitch when needed. So Houston, of course, very scary moving forward. But hell, so are the Braves. So,
Right.
they still got to go out there and Josh Hader still has to go out there and get Ronald Acuna Jr. out. So regardless of how good they look on paper, they don't play games on paper. They got to come into Atlanta and win a couple games against the Braves at Truist Park, and no team wants to have to do that. So that's my final thoughts on that. Speaking of people that don't want to go into Atlanta to play baseball, how about that segue, Sean? You like that one? Go on, I gotta pat myself on the back on that one. Speaking of guys that don't want to go to Atlanta and play baseball, we at the Battery Mates podcast would like to clown one of the highest paid players in baseball right now, Anthony Rendon. For those that did not hear, former Nationals star Anthony Rendon went on the Jack Vita show, which I can't say I know very much about, and dropped one of the craziest quotes in the history of sports. It's right up there with Rob Manfred calling the Commissioner's Trophy a piece of metal, as far as crazy things that you never thought you'd hear somebody say. Anthony Rendon was asked what he would change about Major League Baseball, and his answer was, I quote, "We got to shorten this season, man. It's too many dang games. We got to shorten this bad boy up." And needless to say, he is being crushed online, as he deserves. Sean, I know that we talked a little bit about this beforehand, but I'm gonna hand over to you, but not before saying that Anthony Rendon, he's taken a lot of flack online, but I will say, as far as locker room, clubhouse guys go, Anthony Rendon leading by example by deciding not to play barely any baseball games since signing one of the biggest deals in baseball history. So kudos to him on that one. At least he's sticking to his guns on that one.
Yeah, man, it's like, I don't know why he cares. He already plays a shortened season. Like, it is shortened for him. I don't know why it matters.
Yeah.
Like you said, I think he's played 200 games in 4 years. I don't know if Rendon knows this, but the season is 162. So in 4 years, if you've got 200 games in 4 years, that sounds a lot more like a utility bench player than it would somebody making the kind of money that he's making. And then just he's quickly becoming a very unliked guy in the game of baseball. Between the way that he's been with the media, and then, like, you got to read the room, man. Like, you can't play as little as you've played over the last 4 years, taking the money that you've made. You almost single-handedly have ruined the prime of Mike Trout because you've handcuffed the Angels and you've played zero baseball. And you want to come out and be like, oh, we need to shorten it up. Like, come on, man. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, people forget that last year, Rendon like basically jumped into the stands in Oakland and like tried to attack a fan, which just lends more into you saying the honest truth, which is he is probably now the most unlikable guy in all of baseball. There's nothing that honest, hardworking Americans hate more than a crybaby athlete that makes $30 million a year to play a game and then complains. I mean, you see it all the time in social media. People hate that, and to be now the voice of that movement of people that don't want to play the game and want to get paid way more than anybody else. Not a good look for Anthony Rendon. Absolute clown. I mean, that's just one of the craziest things I've ever heard. I don't know if you saw Jonathan Papelbon earlier today. He tweeted out. So Jared Carabas, I may have mispronounced that name. He's been kind of the ringleader of talking bad about Rendon, which good for Jared. We appreciate that. Papelbon replied to one of his tweets and said, "I'm just going to tweet this." Pick this straight from Twitter. I can definitely confirm Carabas here because Jared tweeted, "Nobody hates baseball more than one of the highest paid players who gets paid not to play." And he said, I can definitely confirm here, played with Rendon, and they did play together for a little bit. And Rendon literally hates baseball. It's long. Isn't that what you signed up for? If you want to play half the season, just do it and give back half your salary. So to have a former teammate come out and say, yeah, no, he hates baseball, just not a good look for Anthony Rendon. I mean, we've all worked with people who, like, you can tell don't want to be at work.
Yeah.
It brings everybody down. That's like, nobody wants to be a part of that culture. And the fact that they were able to win the World Series in 2019, I almost, I'm not going to come on the Battery Mates podcast and talk good about another NL East team. I mean, that's kind of taboo, but I mean, power to them for being able to get through all that and still win. Because I mean, that sounds like kind of guy that's going to ruin your clubhouse every single time. I know I wouldn't want to play with Anthony Rendon right now, whether it be for the Angels or if they decide to move on, or I mean, he could go play in the Korean League for all we know. I mean, if you just want to play 20 games a year, man, you can do it anywhere in the world.
Yeah, no, exactly, and it really does. It just it has to alienate the clubhouse in some capacity. It just does, and just to, like you said, to have a former teammate come out and kind of confirm what everybody kind of thinks. It really just kind of shows you, and it does, like you said, it kind of there's going to be a lot of people that are like, you could have spit in their face and been less disrespectful than being the way that Rendon has been. So definitely not a fan. Definitely think that, he's making more money than most people will dream of seeing in their life to not play a game. And it just, like I said, you read the room. Somebody get in his ear and be like, you're being an idiot.
Yeah. Yeah, well, honestly, and we both want to get our grievances out, but we've probably already given him more time than he deserves. I mean, that's just such a terrible sentiment. So I refuse to worry with that. I'm gonna worry now about the next young crop of baseball players. This group of 16 and 17-year-olds that are busting their whats to become Major League Baseball players. And if you didn't pay attention too much, or whether you're not, the Braves just picked up one of those guys who is busting themselves right now. You guys know I do my prospect of the week every single week, and this week I decided, you might as well. He's been in the news recently. Let's talk a little bit about Jose Perdomo. Jose Perdomo, of course, the major international free agent the Braves signed about a little over a week ago or so. He was the number 3 international prospect coming out that was able to sign. He is a Venezuelan player, plays shortstop, probably play third base and second a little bit as well. But they signed him to the largest signing bonus of any international free agent during this time, during this period, giving him $5 million. Man, that's a 17-year-old just got $5 million to begin training with the Atlanta Braves. So Jose Perdomo, I want to give you a couple of comps that have been given about him because they both should be very exciting if you're a Braves fan. The one that I hear the most, the one that people mostly say he kind of draws a lot of similarities to is Gleyber Torres. who again was an international free agent signing. Number 3 prospect in 2013 with the Cubs, signing him to a big deal at that time. And of course, he now plays for the Yankees. He was a part of that Aroldis Chapman trade in 2016. He was the key piece of that that got the Cubs their eventual closer on their World Series winning team. So a lot of people say Perdomo is like him. The major one that I heard, though, was that a couple of years ago, the Braves director of scouting in Latin America, Jonathan Cruz, said that he thinks he looks like a Miguel Cabrera. I mean, I'll take Miguel Cabrera. Do you want a Miguel Cabrera, Sean? I'll take one of those.
Oh yeah, and the thing is, and you never, obviously, we've said this before. If you're a prospect for the Atlanta Braves and you can play, you're going to get moved up. You're going to move your way through the system, and you're going to find yourself in Atlanta. And so, if you really think about it, what's the one defensive position the Braves don't have locked up long term? Shortstop. And so you've got Arcia. I think Arcia's got another 2 years. I think he's at 24 and 25. Maybe an option in 26. He's got an option either in 25 or 26. But you figure, Acuna, Albies, those guys, saw the major leagues in their, early 20s, late teens, early 20s. And so, it could be another situation where, at 19, 20, 21, Perdomo could be the shortstop that gets signed and plays alongside of, everybody else that's locked up. And it's a pretty good place to be in if you're Perdomo, because a lot of the time when you're that prospect and you get signed by a team like that, okay, a lot of times you're expected to be the guy. And even in 3 years, 3 years, Acuna's going into his age 28 or 28 season, I think. Harris is going into age 25 season. Riley up there around age 30, Olsen early 30s. So even if that's the case, you get to come up and you just got to play baseball and play with the best offensive lineup in the world, And so a lot of that pressure, I think, comes off as far as having to be the man at such a young age. And you can kind of see him where, if he takes off and kind of, lines up with some of these comps. I mean, heck, even if he's the Gleyber Torres that the Yankees have right now, that's a heck of a guy to put in the lineup with the lineup the Braves have. So I think the Braves are in a good spot. I mentioned it before. One of the good things with the Braves being as set as they are is they're now going to get a few year window to really rebuild that farm system. And I think this is a really, really good first step. There's a couple of guys. There's an outfielder in his early 20s that the Braves signed that people are really high on. I saw a clip of him playing hitting batting practice, and he just the ball sounds like somebody like Acuna's hitting the ball when he hits. And you start thinking about maybe Atlanta's finally going to get to rebuild that farm system over these next couple of years because they've done such a good job of extending the guys that they think are going to be the guys for the next 5, 6, 8, 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Braves have had success in the past in the international free agent market. Ronald Acuna came from this same grouping. They specifically got him, and he was only worth like $200,000. So, he was a very small scale signing that they keyed in on and said, no, this is our guy. Andrew Jones is another guy who they brought in through this through this international free agency window. So they've had success in the past. They've had some misses, but every team has misses in free agency and the draft, and it's going to happen. So, are we going to sit here and say Perdomo is going to be a superstar MVP caliber player? Maybe. Who knows? It could be. But let's see what happens. Again, he's 17 years old. Even if when you said 3 years now, 2026, he's not even 20 yet. So
right.
He could have a meteoric rise and be your next, be akin to Juan Soto when he came up at 19 and you were like, this kid's hitting the cover off the ball. Or they could have a 6-year plan in place for him and they're like, no, we'll figure out shortstop in the meantime. And then he could be helping the next wave of the Braves core. Once all these contracts start coming to an end, Well, now we're gonna have a little smoother transition because we got shortstop figured out for a very long time. So I'm very excited about him. I think he's going to be an MLB talent. I really like his prospects of being an all-star caliber player. A lot of people say a lot of really good things about him. So we'll keep our eye out. We got a while to keep our eye out for him, but keep Perdomo at the top of your list of names to know in the Braves system. So that's going to be our prospect of the week, which leads us to our other weekly segment, Mr. Sean the Sandman. Of course, I call it the sleeper pick league, but you have a different name. What do you call your
The surefire bet of the week.
Sandman surefire bet of the week? Sean, I didn't get a chance to watch UFC fights on Saturday, but I know those are where you usually go to. But what do you got for us this week, man? How am I gonna not betting advice? So I mean, of course, we're not telling you guys to do this. But when I listen to you, what am I gonna be winning money on this week? When everything starts going on.
We are going with the NFL Conference Championship week.
Ooh.
We're doing a parlay, 4-leg parlay, covering both the NFC and the AFC championship game. So in the Detroit and San Francisco game, I've got two from each game. So I'm taking Detroit +7. I think Detroit keeps it close. I think their defense is good enough. Deebo Samuel may not be playing for San Francisco. Kind of people are you still get a lot of arguments about kind of what people think about Brock Purdy. And so I think the Lions, with their coach, they'd run through a wall for Dan Campbell. And so I think that I think they keep it close, and I think they cover at +7. That's a -115. I'm going to take the over in that game. They keep it close, but I do think it's still going to be high scoring. Both those offenses are pretty good. For the Niners, obviously you've got Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk. If Deebo plays, you've got Deebo Samuel, you've got George Kittle, you've got all those guys there. Over on Detroit's side, man, you've got Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jared Goff's been playing really well. You've got Jahmyr Gibbs. You've got Laporta, the tight end over there. You've got some weapons on both sides of the football over in that game. So taking the over, it's 51. So taking the over there, that's -110. Kansas City and Baltimore, I'm taking the over. Both of those offenses again. If you've got Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, they tend to play pretty well in the postseason. They actually just passed most touchdowns by a wide receiver and quarterback duo in playoff history. They just passed Brady and Gronk in the game last night. So I'm taking the over in that one. That's 44.5. That's -110. But I'm taking the Baltimore money line. I think Baltimore does beat Kansas City. That money line's at -180. So all four of those, if you were to bet those right now on DraftKings, it's a +933 line. So $10 pays out 103.36. So I like those are the four things I like. Kansas City at Baltimore, the over, Baltimore money line, Detroit +7 taking the points, and then the over in Detroit and San Francisco for again $10 pays out 103.36.
Sheesh, man, that steak's gonna taste good next week. Wow, man, oh man. Okay, but again, this is not advice. And if you have a problem with gambling, there is a hotline you can call. Please call it. There's people in
1-800 Gambler.
1-800 Gambler. Yes, thank you. So call 1-800 Gambler if you have a gambling problem. Make sure you walk in knowing what you're able to lose. Don't put yourself in a bad spot.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for that, Sean. I'll be enjoying that prime rib next week after that bet. Speaking of bets, though, we are we're making some bets here. We're betting on what we think the Braves are going to be doing next year. We have 5 weeks until spring training starts, so we're going to spend the next 4 shows that we do before we get to start talking about spring training games. We actually get to start talking about baseball soon enough. Actual games, actual performances. I cannot wait. But until then, to keep the time rolling, we're going to do some projections for this upcoming season. I think that we both kind of agreed not to worry about injuries too much unless you specifically think that somebody's going to get hurt like I do. Spoiler alert. Um, so we're not talking about injuries. We're just going to give projections on what we think each player is going to do this year. We're going to start with the rotation this week. And then, we'll move into the infield, the outfield, the bullpen, stuff like that. Bullpen and bench, however we want to work it out. But you can expect some projections over the next few weeks. And we're going to start with our starting pitchers today. So last week we talked about, if you didn't listen to last week's conversation on who's going to start fifth for the Braves, that's a must listen to. We both kind of gave our opinions on who we think is going to be in that fifth spot in the rotation. I gave a hot take of somebody winning the job and then losing it by midseason. So if you want to listen to that before you listen to these projections, go back and listen to episode 11. But for episode 12, we're talking about these Braves starting pitchers, man. We got 4 spots for sure, and then we both had our opinions on who's going to be in the 5th spot in the rotation. But I'm excited to hear what you think some of these guys are going to be doing this year, Sean. And I think we should start off with the big fish, the guy who just was in Cy Young talks all of 2023. Had a huge year, won a lot of games, and Spencer Strider was that man. He's kind of walking in as the ace in 2024. We're going to do in win-loss, ERA, innings pitched, and strikeouts. Well, listen, I'm saying that he's proverbially walking in. He's walking into it. Now, at the end of the season, it might be different. But walking in, he is the ace of that staff. He has just finished top 5 in Cy Young voting again. That's fine. If you don't agree with that, that's fine. But you are wrong. So let's hear about Spencer Strider, man. What do you think he's going to be doing in 2024?
All right. So first things first, Dave and I have not communicated these numbers to one another. So they could be very similar or they could be miles apart. So that's the first little caveat. Second one, how dare you call anybody but Max Fried? Max Dorian Fried is the ace of the Atlanta Braves.
Oh,
it's not
the middle name.
Yes,
middle name.
Not close. Not close. Max Fried is the ace. Okay, no. So as long as he's in Atlanta, he's the ace. He's the guy.
Okay. Right?
So, so my take on Spencer Strider, I think he's going to go somewhere in the win-loss, probably 15 to 18 wins. I've got him at 16. And then I think he's going to lose somewhere between 3 and 6 games, but I've got him at 16 and 4. I've got him at a 3.45 ERA. I think he's going to strike out 230 guys and throw 180 innings plus.
Yeah, we're pretty similar on this one for sure. I have him at the same win total, and I have him in the same area of losses. So I think Strider should go 16 and 6 this year. I have him with a 3.3 ERA, and I have him throwing 160 innings. I think that he pitched 185 last year, so I could see them wanting to pull back a little bit this year just to maybe say, well, let's keep him even fresher for the playoffs. Not that I thought he wasn't throwing hard in the playoffs, but, let's just be safe with them. So I got 160 innings pitched and about 230 to 240 strikeouts over that time. So another big season for him. He should be close to, if not leading the league in strikeouts again.
I think I did read somewhere that one of the big projection sites, like models that they use, and I don't remember which one it was, but is projecting him to win the pitcher's Triple Crown next year, which would be something. So
yeah, well, and that's. Listen, I'm not going to say that's not possible, but right. To say that about a guy coming off almost a 3.9 ERA, that's very bold. I know he was very unlucky because his FIP was one of the best in all of baseball. Fielding independent pitching, which kind of talks about strikeouts and walks a little stronger than stuff that pitchers don't have control over, such as placement of the fielders and whatnot. So he very well could, but that is a bold take. I like that take, though.
I do too. It was bold, but I like it too. But yeah, I think it's we're kind of on the same wavelength as far as where I think Strider ends up at. So let's hear your take on Charlie Morton.
Charlie Morton.
Let's
Okay,
go to Charlie Morton.
we're skipping your ace. We're going to the number 3 guy. Okay.
Well, we gotta save the best for last.
Oh, okay. Well, unfortunately, we already talked about Striders, so no, I'm just joking with you. Okay, Charlie Morton. I have an final season for Charlie Morton. I really don't think I think he's. I think when you get a guy who's half in, half out, like Charlie Morton, where you didn't know if he was coming back or not. I think a lot of times, even if you come back, you're kind of like, oh, okay, one last go of it. Let's get the last little bit of juice out. So I have kind of an ass season for Charlie Morton. I have him going 12-9. I have him with a 4.4 ERA. And I got him with 150 strikeouts and 130 innings. I think that kind of an ass season. But if that's your 3 or 4 starter, that's not bad. 12 wins from that spot is gonna look really good at the end of the season.
Well, it's another one that we're pretty similar as far as how we see it. I do think he throws a few more innings than you did, but I have him at 13-8
Okay.
with a 4.25 ERA. I think I got him at 165 Ks and 160 innings pitched. So still pretty similar. Like I said, I got him a few more innings, a few more Ks, but I kind of think that's where I think that like you said, his stuff has been plenty good the last couple of seasons. It just kind of depends on where's he at mentally, where's he at physically. I think he's going into age 39 season, I think, and like you said, we've kind of wondered the last year or two if he was going to be coming back. So pretty close there, I think, on the two of us. So I will let you pick who we go to next, but I know where I would go if I were you, but I'll let you spin it around on me for this one.
Okay, I hope you were thinking of Chris Sale, because that's where I'm going. Because if you want to save the number 2 starter Max Fried for last, then we might not even have the same 5th guy. So let's play the safe game here. Let's talk about Chris Sale. Chris Sale, I don't think pitches a full season because he hasn't pitched a full season in a very long time. So I have him with basically like not half season stats, but like 2/3 of his season stats. I have him throwing 100 innings this year, which for Chris Sale recently is a fine number. 100 innings gets you quite a few starts. I have him throwing 120 Ks over that time because he's still a great strikeout pitcher. I have him with a 3.7 ERA, so not as good as Strider, but quite a bit better than Morton from my projections. But I think he's going to be a very lucky pitcher. I think that the team's really going to perform well when he pitches. He just seems like the kind of guy where, kind of like Strider, where you're like, you don't worry as much about defense because the Chris Sale might not need defense for 2/3 of the game. He could strike out 10 to 12 guys, and then you're like, well, it's great. I'm happy we have these guys in the lineup to hit home runs because we didn't need their defense at all. So I have been going 9-3 this year. Not quite getting to 10 wins because of the fewer innings and not pitching the full season, but not a guy who picks up a lot of losses. So 9-3 is my record prediction for Chris Sale. And again, that's your 4th starter. That's about as successful as you could hope for in a number 4 guy in the rotation.
Yeah. I think he's going to stay healthy. I don't think he's going to throw 180 innings by any means, but I think Atlanta keeps him healthy. I figure he's probably going to start 25 games, somewhere in that area. So not quite that full 30 to 32, 33 that you're going to get out of your top 2 guys, assuming they're healthy. But I've got Sale going 14-7. I think he has kind of that same similar win-loss record as Morton, kind of in that same ballpark. I have him a 3.75 ERA, so we're kind of right in the same area there on that. I think he throws a 140. I think he gets 140 innings. I think, like I said, 25, 26 starts. And then if he throws 140 innings and he's healthy, I think he's going to clear 170 strikeouts.
Yeah.
So I think, he's going to have so I've got him at 14-7, 3.75, 175 Ks and 140 innings pitched.
Yeah. As soon as you said 140 innings, my first thought was 175 strikeouts. So we're definitely on the same page on that one as well.
I guess we will. We'll go with the fifth. We'll go with the
Mm-hmm.
fifth starter spot here.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
why don't you go ahead and lead this one off, Sean?
I
Because
will.
because
I will.
I'll be honest of why I'm going to let you go first is because I put two names down here. I have them
I did.
sharing
I
the
did.
fifth spot.
Well, so here's what I did. I put two names down, um, but I have a stat line kind of for each of those names, and then just kind of a general. This is kind of what I think the fifth starter is going to look like, kind of regardless of who it's going to be. Just because I think it's kind of the four guys you could slide in there. Really, I think it's going to be a 3-man race when it all comes down to it. I don't think the Braves are going to shove Hurston Waldrop in there this early. So I really think it's going to come down to Elder, Inoa, and AJ Smith-Shawver. So my general fifth starter line, I think that fifth starter spot's going to go somewhere in the neighborhood of about 14 and 11, 13 and 12, maybe 15 and 10, somewhere in that range. I've got around a 4.5 ERA for that fifth spot, between whoever it's going to be. About 135 strikeouts and about 170 innings pitched covered out of that fifth spot. I think Elder starts the season out as the starter. If he falters, then he has to. It does get there is a change made. I've got Elder at about 8-6, 4.65 ERA, about 60 strikeouts in roughly 90 innings pitched, somewhere kind of in there. But I actually think that, as much as it pains me to say, because I'm such a big AJ Smith-Shawver guy, I want him to have a full year in AAA. So I hope if it's not Elder and the Elder loses a spot, I hope it goes to Huascar Ynoa, who pitched very well before breaking his hand, and then the Tommy John and kind of everything that snowballed from there. And so if it does go to him, I've got him at 6-5 with a 4.5 ERA, 70 strikeouts, and about 80 innings pitched. So
Gotcha.
I think that's kind of the way that it's going to shape up. And if Elder goes out and goes 14 and 11 with a 4.5 ERA, 130 strikeouts, and 170 innings, like, heck yeah, let's do it. Let's roll it. You know what I mean? I'm taking it. So I just think that's kind of how that's going to shake out, and that could be a combination of three guys, or heck, Vine's coming up and making a spot start, like you said, if Sale is hurt, or if they say, okay, we're going to do a 6-man rotation for this period where we don't have a lot of off days, or things like that, if they do something like that. So I gave myself some wiggle room there, but
Yeah.
that's kind of how I see the fifth shaking out.
And so for me as well, I have a lot of innings for these guys just because I think that they're both gonna. It's not going to be 32 starts. You're probably going to be looking at closer between these two guys, like 36 starts or so. It's, in case Morton or Sale gets injured, one of them is going to have to jump in. They can come out of the bullpen when needed as well. So when I say that between these two guys, there's 200 innings pitched, I don't mean that they're going to start for 200 innings in that fifth spot only. But I have two guys throwing 100 innings this year, and that's Elder and AJ Smith-Shawver. I think they go to AJ Smith-Shawver. I don't trust Inoa. I just, there's so many injuries, and he hasn't pitched in so long that anything you get from him, I think, is like phenomenal. Just so good. Anything you can get from him, you're happy with. I don't think they're going to depend on him for any high leverage situations or starts. He's going to be the guy that, like, hey, we've won 7 straight games and we're playing the Athletics at 1:00 on a Wednesday afternoon in Oakland. Okay, Inoa can start that game. If we lose that game, we're fine. But I don't think they're going to leverage too many innings out of him in big spots. So for Bryce Elder, I have him going 7-7. I have him throwing a 4.1 ERA. And I have him throwing 100 innings with 85 strikeouts. He wasn't a strikeout per inning guy, so I don't think he will be this time around either. AJ Smith-Shawver, I won't lie to you, I have him struggling. But I think that once you bring him up, you have to keep rolling with him. So he's going to throw 100 innings as well, I say. I say around 80 to 85 strikeouts as well. I think he'll go 5-7 with a 4.5 ERA. His ERA was high last year. I mean, he gave up a lot of, he gave stuff up. I think that he'll be really good long term, but I think right now he is a quadruple A player that is transitioning to an MLB player. When you say quadruple A, usually you mean a guy that's not good enough. I think right now his skill level is quadruple A, but he's not going to stay there, obviously.
He's also 20. He's also 21 years old.
Exactly. So that's why you're not worried about if he has a little bit of rougher season. But once you bring him up, this year, I think you have to keep him up. You gave him this chance last year. I don't think you can bring him up in June if he's pitching well at AAA, and then, you've had a couple bad starts, now you're back to AAA. I think you have to keep him up and you have to get him innings. You have to for your long-term goals. He has to be a guy that even if he's struggling, you have to say, okay, we're going to find spots that we can pitch him at. If it's a blowout in either direction, we'll put AJ Smith-Shawver in if he's struggling. If he's doing well, he can pitch whenever, man. He's got the stuff. So that's what I think. You combine those two numbers, you're looking at 12 and 14, about a 4.3 ERA. And about 160 strikeouts and 200 innings. We know the Braves have a lot of strikeout guys, so those strikeout numbers are higher, but they're supposed to be. Yep. So let's talk about your guy,
the ace of the Atlanta Braves.
Your ace of the staff. Let's talk about Max Fried. You have him on your fantasy team, of course. Your fantasy draft of Braves rosters we did recently, which if you didn't listen to those, you have to go back and hear those. Those were great teams that we took. Give me your prediction for Max Fried. What's his middle name again? You know it off the top of your head.
Dorian.
Max Dorian Fried. What do you got for our man?
I have Max Fried going 18-5.
Okay.
I have him at a 3.1 ERA. I really went fringe, almost went 2.9. I was right around that 3.0 ERA mark, coming off of kind of the injury and stuff and, kind of the way the season was last year. I bumped that up a little bit, but I think he's going to be right in that high 2, low 3 ERA spot. I have him throwing 190 innings. It's a contract year. And I think he's going to do whatever he has to do to remain healthy and be out there every fifth day. And I think he breaks 200 strikeouts.
Wow, big strikeout numbers for him, huh?
Yeah. So it is in 2021, which was one of his better years. He was right around that 9 and almost 10 strikeouts per 9 innings. So he's, a plus, in his down year, he was still up between a 7 and an 8 K per 9. So he's right around that strikeout to strikeout and a half per inning. And like I said, I think he kind of pitches out of his mind a little bit this year. We've seen what he does when he's healthy in situations with some adversity. If you think about what he did in that closeout game against Houston in 21, where I think it was Kyle Tucker stepped on his foot in the first inning, had second, third, one out. Got out of that inning and then just pitched an absolute gem. And there's some photos from that game that if you are a baseball fan, there are photos you want to see. So if I remember right, I think it was Soler's big home run. Everybody's freaking out and it pans to Fried and he's not even looking at the ball. He's looking dead set straight forward. And it's like, this dude is dialed in. And so I think that's the Max Fried we get for all 162 next season. Going into this contract year, coming off the injury, the way the Braves have lost the last 2 years where he's limped into the playoffs, whether it was with the injuries or illness. And I think Fried comes in with a little bit of chip on his shoulder and just kind of pitches at a Cy Young level as a Cy Young level pitcher.
Yeah, that's a really good season. You would think with how much you just hyped your guy up, you talked about how much you like Max Fried, you'd think you'd have better projections for him than I have. And you don't, because I'm blowing that right out of the water. I'm going to start off my projection for 2024 Max Fried by saying this. I'm picking Max Fried to win the Cy Young Award in the National League this year. He is the guy that I'm picking as the number one guy to win the award this year. I have Max Fried going 21-5. I have him with a 2.20 ERA. I have him throwing, crazy numbers. I have him with a 2.20 ERA. I have him throwing 185 innings, and in those 185 innings, I have him striking out 170 batters. Those numbers are very similar to his 2022 season where he threw 185 innings and struck out 170. He finished second in Cy Young voting that year. Really what kept him back from winning the award in 2022 was he kind of struggled with his win-loss. He was 14-7, and also Sandy Alcantara pitched 6 complete games with a shutout. So nobody was going to beat him in his 2.28 ERA. But I think that he gets over the hump this year. I think Max Fried wins 21 or 22 games and wins the National League Cy Young Award. And that's not going to be the last trophy I have handing out through our projections. So I'll let that go through as well. But man, come on, Sean Sandman, you talking all this game about Max Fried, and you got a full point higher ERA than me. You let me talk bad about him, call him the number 2 pitcher, and then my Max Fried's dad can beat up your Max Fried's dad. What do we got going on here, man?
I also have him with 30 more strikeouts than you do, and with 10 more innings pitched. So, I mean, here's the deal: if you go 18-5 with a 3.0 ERA and 200 strikeouts, you're going to be in the Cy Young conversation. So your numbers are he runs away with the Cy Young. He runs away with the Cy Young. You didn't even
say he was going to win it. You said he was going to be one of the contenders. I said he's going to win the award. Come on, man.
Yeah. Well, I've got my own. He's going to win an award coming up later in the projections also. So
maybe a little bit of foreshadowing by the battery mates, huh?
Absolutely.
Well, that's what we got for the rotation this year. You know, I think the rotation is a very strong point for the Braves. If you put together, that's what 37, 49. You know, you're looking at about between those 6 guys, you're looking at about almost 70 wins. You add in 25 wins from your bullpen, which most teams get every year. That's 95 wins. If you get 30, or if Elder or Sale pitches a full season, does better than we expect, that's how you get to 100. And of course 100 will probably get you into the playoffs. I don't think anyone's worried about the Braves getting into the playoffs, but with that being said, you have to play the games. What did I just say about 20 minutes ago? You don't play the games on paper.
You don't play it on paper.
So,
absolutely.
Between the foreshadowings and the callbacks, here we are. That's all that I have planned out for today, Sean. Any lasting words you want to leave our wonderful listeners with?
I'm just ready for Braves baseball, man. We're getting close. Like it's close enough that like I can smell it. You know what I mean? We're at that spot where it's like I can envision sitting on my couch, drinking a beer, watching the Braves play spring training. And it's just like I can see it. I can feel like Braves baseball being back. I'm just ready for it. And so I hope that everybody out in Braves country is excited as we are for the spring training and the regular season to get started in the next month or 2.
Yeah, man, I cannot wait. I'm very excited. I know that usually MLB TV every year, MLB.com, to watch all the games, out-of-market games, and I'm not in Atlanta, so I get to watch every Braves game this year, no problem. Very excited for that. Super excited for baseball. It's cold still where I'm at, so I need some warm weather, and I need to be at a baseball game with a beer in my hand as soon as possible. Absolute needs, immaculate vibes. And keep an eye on our social media. As I said, we're going to be doing our immaculate grids now every day. And in the meantime, keep following us everywhere you can. YouTube, Spotify, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. We got videos going up everywhere, posts, we're sharing, retweeting, whatever you can do on your social media. You Gen Z kids know more than I do, but we're doing it, man. We are doing it. So give us a follow there. Let's talk Braves baseball going into this season on those apps. In the meantime, that is going to do it for this week's episode of the Battery Mates podcast. That is the Sandman Sean. I am Dirty Dave, and we will catch you all in the next one.